Take care of your mom, Robin.
So it's done. The Boys has officially come to an end, and the final might have been everything you dreamed of, or not what you thought you'd be getting at all. While many of the series' main character conflicts were settled in Season 5, Episode 8, particularly the ones between Homelander and Billy Butcher as well as Starlight and The Deep, that doesn't mean that the ending was as clean-cut as it could have been. In fact, there are several questions that went unanswered by the finale, and in this video, we'll be taking a look at 10 such open queries. Without further ado, let's get right to it.
I can't let you do it.
Let's eat Hughie and his gun.
What became of the global soup virus sample? Homelander dying a coward's death at the halfway point of the series finale told us one thing very clearly. We were going to get some kind of payoff to the Billy Butcher is the ultimate villain theory. That gained traction in the lead up to this season. After all, without that, what could be the whole point of the show going great lengths to cook up a soup virus and then show us just how devastating it could be? The final heartbreaking confrontation between Hughie and Butcher happens because Butcher snatches a lethal biological weapon after losing Ryan's trust, and terrors life in quick succession. Emotionally isolated and angry that his anger still hadn't died within him, Butcher decides that the only thing that could make him whole was turning the world's most privileged minority group into an afterthought. Hughie is forced to kill Butcher to stop him from triggering a global genocide, but after Butcher falls, what actually happens to the final, volatile vial of the virus? We know that Butcher rigged Vaught's plumbing/ventilation system with it, but we never do learn whether it's been removed safely, left there to be forgotten, or was even thought of in the first place. Did Hughie destroy it, or is it hidden away somewhere, waiting to be a catastrophic plot device for a future spin-off? Because with Homelander dead and Soldier Boy in deep sleep again, the soup virus can do what it was made to do and wipe out every soup off the face of the earth. Such a weapon can prove to be the ultimate bargaining chip. Right now, we don't know what happened to the virus, and maybe that's by design. Or maybe it's just a story thread that Kripke and his team forgot to snip. Either way, this one question will be hotly debated for quite a while, we're sure, because it was such an important part of Season 5 and the overall identity of the franchise.
That's why I've agreed to return to Vought as its interim CEO.
What is the new geopolitical reality of the United States? Before his death, Homelander literally murdered the President of the United States, nearly dissolved the traditional government structure, and was this close to making the Democratic Church of America the official state religion. That's not even mentioning the fact that he got soups into America's military-industrial complex, policing operations, and eventually pulled a Donald Trump by sending troops into sanctuary states. He also positioned himself as America's new god for quite a while, for the entire world saw how weak and willing to compromise he truly was. And though he was killed in the end on live TV, you don't just undo a fascist theological coup overnight. Dakota Bob has returned as the president after Congress unanimously impeached Ashley Barrett, after all the things she did to keep herself safe from Homelander, and while that does hint at a political destruction effort, how fractured is the rest of the US government? And how fractured is America itself? We know that even after Stormfront's death and her being exposed as a Nazi, there were Stormfronters all across the more conservative parts of the country, quietly supporting her blonde-haired, blue-eyed super being. But are they still out there? Are Starlighters' lives still in peril? Are they being given restitution and compensatory support by the Singer administration? Because officially, all the things that Homelander did were sanctioned by the regime that supported him. What about America's economy and their diplomatic relations with other countries after this complete debacle of a government breakdown? And how did Dakota Bob actually handle the PR nightmare that would have surely been unleashed after the events of the finale that unfold within the Oval Office itself? We don't get the answers to these questions, and perhaps we never will. In the real world, the consequences of radical extremism like this requires years, if not decades, of trust-building exercises to wipe away the stain of what was a sudden coup in all but name. But the only thing we know as of now is that 9 months after Homelander's death, Bob Singer is back in office, and Congress is still functional. What happened to the breast milk replacing formula executive order? What happened to the Democratic Church of America? We still don't know, and it looks like we never will.
I know what my dad was. And it's better that he's gone.
Can Ryan ever escape Homelander's shadow? Another thing we won't know is how Ryan's life will look like after everything that he's been part of, willingly or otherwise. Before the finale, the global population saw Ryan as Homelander's son. They saw him as an ex-Homelander in fact, and his powers were on par with his dad's. At least when his dad was not on V1. The last the public had heard of him, he'd be sent off to boarding school before they saw him fighting his dad. But whether the camera angle used to capture the fight was ideal or not, we don't know. And while we did see America making every effort to conceal Homelander's very existence by painting over his posters, graffiti that included him, and all other such paraphernalia, will we ever see them extending an olive branch to Ryan? The kid already had a hard time adjusting to society because of the isolated environment he was raised in. And now that he's lost his powers and is being fostered by MM, those things could change, but will people stop seeing him as the son of a psychopath? It's difficult to say, especially because those Homelanders that might still cling to their fallen god could very well use the same argument Vought used to discredit the Flight 37 footage to claim that everything the world saw during the broadcast was fake. We know that claiming a live broadcast is fake is the most boneheaded decision a person could make when it comes to such things. But it's also exactly what happens in our world as well. So the question of whether Ryan would escape Homelander's shadow is as pertinent as ever. Perhaps the kid will be bullied for the rest of his life, considering his lineage. But we do know one thing about him. Ryan survived the world's worst bullies. Because anything humanity can do to him, his father's already done 100 times over. So even if he doesn't escape his dad's shadow, he will be just fine. Because he knows how to take care of himself. What really happens to the remaining supe? As for the rest of supe kind, they were spared a horrifying fate when Butcher's virus didn't hit the atmosphere. But that doesn't mean that they've changed. Actually, it looks like they're exactly the same because in the epilogue, Dakota Bob calls Hughie and asks him to head up the reinstated Federal Bureau of Supe Affairs, seeing as everything at Vought was, in his words, a cluster. This tells us two things about the post-Homelander era of Vought. One, all of Stan Edgar's promise of creating real change within the supe community have been hollow. And two, neither side of the aisle has any idea what to do with supes in a world that's been permanently changed by the loss of Homelander. Public trust in superheroes is no longer what it once was. And for all of Vaught's PR excellence, they can no longer hide the fact that supes are just as violent and dangerous as the human criminal element of the world. In fact, more so, considering they're all genetically modified and possess freakish strength and abilities. As of now, we have no idea if supes are still being granted defense contracts by major American cities and states like they were back in Season 1. Neither do we know if Vought has an actual rehabilitation plan for them, or if they're just making empty promises for the sake of public appearances. So, while the saying, the more things change, the more things stay the same, is applicable to supe kind, we still don't know what being a supe means anymore in this world, and perhaps we never will. What becomes of Gen V's new generation? Another thing we don't know is how the characters introduced during Gen V are going to resolve their character arcs. Because Season 3 has been cancelled by Amazon, and the last we see of them, they're moving to Canada to essentially start over. The only Gen V characters we see are Marie, Emma, and Jordan, and their combined screen time doesn't even last for 10 minutes. Plus, we don't know how Godolphin University is going to come back from the whole Thomas Godolphin debacle, or rather if it will ever come back from it ever again. And what about all the students that did survive Godolphin's murderous tirade? Where are they? What happened to them? Are they going to be forgotten? Are they still out there fighting? Have they remained in America? Or did they escape to greener pastures elsewhere? The next iteration of supes was axed from the main storyline without mercy, and in a way, that's good. Gen V was never going to reach the same heights as the boys, and that was evident from the first season itself. But in the broader context of the Vought branded franchise, what's their future? Perhaps there isn't one anymore, and if you ask us, that's for the best. Can Hughie and Annie ever have a normal life? And will their baby inherit Starlight's power? One of the best things about the finale was its actual ending, because it showed us that even after living in terror and fleeing a crazy maniac like Homelander and fighting him to the death, Hughie and Annie got a happy ending, or rather, as happy an ending as it could have, considering they're about to start a family. That's right folks, Starlight is pregnant. And there's a little Campbell January growing in her belly even as we speak. And she's the one supe whose future we can predict, because the series ends with Hughie and Starlight getting a dispatch call in their new electronic shop, and Annie flying to save the day despite having a baby in her belly. She's finally living her dream of being an actual grassroots superhero, and Hughie finally has a store of his own. But this also raises questions about their lifestyle. Will they ever be able to lead a normal life? Will they keep pretending like they didn't go through traumatic events that would have broken people stronger than them as well? Will they be able to raise their child while Starlight goes on missions reminiscent of Invincible Corpse from Invincible? We don't even know if they're charging money for all these rescues she makes. And in an inflating economy, will freelance vigilante work be enough to keep their family fed and clothed? Plus, what about the baby? Will the child inherit Annie's powers? Or will it be born a normal baby who'll need a compound V injection to awaken his power, like Polarity and his son? And when Robin grows up, what then? Will he or she or they be able to function in society normally? Robin's mom is one of the most recognizable faces on planet Earth, after all. She became the face of a resistance that went against injustice inflicted upon the common man by power-hungry supes and corporations. How will all these complex dynamics play out? Unless we get a special episode dedicated to Starlight and Hughie's new life, we'll never know the precise answer to all these questions. And we don't know if that's for the best, but it definitely leaves the door open for more storytelling, which makes our brains itch.
One last go.
Did the boys actually break the cycle or just win one war? Another thing that we don't have a clear answer for is whether the boys actually broke the cycle of supe atrocity, or if they just won a single battle and call it an end of the war. Homelander was the biggest threat to mankind, that's unquestionable. From the very start, he was the villain, and killing him was the goal. But did killing him actually change all the systematic issues that make supe so problematic? Because it's not just him, it's all of supe kind that's problematic. For all his faults, Homelander never did drugs or coax people into pleasuring him on the regular. He did at one time with Becca, yes, and that sparked his entire franchise's existence. But many supes have way worse habits than him, and this is a systematic issue because Vought has cultivated a culture of enabling their vices and then covering up their screw-ups for a literal decade. Damage control is what they call it. But it's really just making bad people worse in our eyes. And the fact that Dakota Bob wants to reinstate the FBSA is indicative of the fact that the cycle still remains, albeit in a less militant form. Now, yes, it's true that supes being demilitarized is a major victory for mankind, but is that the only thing that can remove their influence over humanity as a whole? Or did killing Homelander alone solve the world's biggest supe problem? We don't get a precise decision on the same. And even the direction that we get from Annie and Hughie's new venture is so narrow that we can't fully call it a path ahead. Is Sister Sage permanently average, or will her brain heal? In one of the finale's most shocking twists, Sister Sage deliberately provokes Kimiko into hitting her with the newly replicated Solid Boy depowering blast. This presumably fires the V out of her system, and Sage is visibly thrilled to be rid of her hyper-intelligence, finally getting a break from the constant noise of her own mind. But is that really what happens to her? Because she also retains certain aspects of her preachy Megamind personality, particularly when she calls the boys stupid for even trying to take down Homelander. Yes, she happily goes to Potterworld after being quote-unquote depowered, but as far as we know, her power is ultra specialized and purely biological. Compound V only enhanced Sage's brain, her prefrontal cortex more accurately. She never had super strength or endurance, and if she can survive multiple lobotomies, is it possible that her brain can also survive a V negating radiation blast? The human mind is the most adaptable organ known to us after all, and we never did get an official confirmation on if the blast permanently altered her DNA or not. Is her super brain gone forever, or will it slowly regenerate over time, cursing her to become the smartest person alive all over again? For Sage's sake, we hope it doesn't, because it looks like Kimiko's radiation blast is exactly like Soldier Boy's. But the only people she ever used it on haven't been observed long enough to ascertain whether its effects are permanent or temporary, and 2 of them are dead. The reason we bring this up is because the experiment that was conducted on Kimiko's body was meant to replicate Soldier Boy's power exactly, and that experiment wasn't allowed to run its full course. So there is a chance that the V might return, considering it's been a part of Sage's physiology for so long. If it turns out that Kimiko's V blasts are actually temporary, then that creates new problems for Ryan as well. But alas, we'll never know the truth of that. But unresolved ethical/legal questions remain about natural-born supes, like Ryan, versus engineered supes. You might be thinking why this particular question matters considering everything else we've seen. But here's the thing. The revelation that all supes weren't born and were created with Compound V was the first major turning point of The Boys, because it took it from a simple revenge story to a complex tale of bioengineering, propaganda, corporate sabotage, and so much else. The series constantly raised questions about rights, control, and personhood of superpowered humans in its first 4 seasons. And yet, by season 5, all those complications were abandoned for the simple approach of good guys versus bad guys with a deadly virus thrown into the mix. It's almost as if Compound V disappeared from the story, not in the sense that it didn't exist anymore, but in the sense that its impact on the world at large was shrunk down to being one thing that can make Homelander even stronger than before. Plus, there's ethical fallout of Vought illegally experimenting on human beings that hasn't been fully addressed. And neither has the fact that Ryan and the baby growing in Starlight's womb might be the only natural-born supes of this world. The finale doesn't settle whether society will protect, weaponize, or regulate supes going forward beyond monitoring them through the FBSA once again. And neither does it tell us if Compound V itself will be allowed to exist or be destroyed for all the ills it inflicted upon the world. This is one of our biggest issues with the finale, because it could have taken a proper hardline and moral stance on such matters, but it chose to give us a montage and a happy ending instead. What started off as a serious mirror being held up to the vices of the world had quite a generic lost chapter, and now that chapter can never be reversed. Are there still hidden supes we never met? The show revealed again and again that Vought had secrets inside secrets. Hidden labs, classified files, illegal experiments, abandoned children, Black Ops programs, and old Soldier Boy era history that would be giving future generations nightmares for centuries to come, like the fact that his team before Payback knew they were meant to be Nazi super soldiers. Hell, in season 5 itself, we were introduced to an entire legion of psychic supes that we didn't even know existed, including guys like Synapse, who was convicted for killing his own brother. And though Vought will never be the same power it once was, who's to say it doesn't have dozens of other such facilities and supes tucked away underneath its corporate cloak? This is why, even after the main ending, the Boysverse still feels bigger than the characters we follow. There could be failed experiments, forgotten teams, or secret government-controlled supes still out there, working in the shadows to recreate and perfect the true glory of Frederick Vaught's immortal Ichor. And because of how the finale ended, we will never know if that's true or not. These are the 10 biggest questions we could think of that the show left unanswered. But what do you guys think? Are there any other questions you'd have liked to see being resolved before The Boys went off air? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more soup-based content. We'll see you guys real soon with yet another video, so until then, stay safe and have a nice day.